Hello everyone, Friendo here, and I am responding to a question from a user called Tuple the Cat that he placed up on one of my videos, answers to 22 questions from creationists. So his question is, why are there upside down trees whose roots are pulling the layers together? Now I asked him for some clarification to see what his sources were. I have a pretty good idea of where they come from. But this is a young man who said, well, you know, it's just the creationist argument. So I'm going to try to approach this from a couple different ways to answer his question. So first off, with just the information that's in the question itself, it doesn't make any sense. The roots of the trees pulling the layers together. That's not how rocks work. If we really are talking about layers of rock, they hold themselves together. If we're talking about loose soil, then it is held together by tree roots. If we're talking about sedimentary rock, coal, limestone, sandstone, the sorts of formations where so-called polystrate trees exist, then the roots have nothing to do with holding the rock together. Now, in terms of the question of polystrate trees, that is exclusively a creationist talking point. To geologists, to mainstream geologists, the term is simply a fossil tree. That is, we are looking at a layer of sedimentary rock, and within that layer we find trees that have been fossilized. Now, knowing that fossils form in rock makes absolutely no difference if it is an animal or if it is a tree. So to people who are not creationists, to mainstream geologists, there's nothing surprising about finding trees. In fact, this issue was first addressed 145 years ago by one of Darwin's contemporaries who was himself a Christian. Now, in terms of the presence of roots, that is often taken to be evidence of the fossils being formed on site. That is, the trees grew up where they were. We're talking about bogs, marshes, swamplands. These are the sorts of areas that form coal, limestone, sandstone. But specifically looking at layers of coal, we find fossilized trees in sight next to other fossilized vegetable matter like grass and leaves, as well as fossilized animals such as lizards. So there is no real surprise that they're there. Now, the presence of a root system preserved along with the tree itself would indicate that it was there, it stayed there, and took a long time to fossilize. Whereas the absence of a root system would show that it was uprooted by some sort of catastrophic event and transported elsewhere. So the presence of these fossil trees without a root system upside down would seem to indicate some sort of a flood. But the presence of the tree with a root system upside down would seem to indicate a local catastrophe, that is, a landslide, or if the strata underneath the trees, say, was eroded in a sinkhole, something like that, that the tree was in some way or other the subject of a catastrophe, but didn't leave the site that it was at. Now, a big problem for the global flood theory, and this is something that creationists never ever seem to take into account, is that if their proposition is that some sort of formation feature is the result of a flood, then it would be universal worldwide when you're looking at features of those age. And it's not. Sometimes the trees are upside down, sometimes the trees are right side up. There is no consistency to this theory. finding a tree upside down with its root system intact might indeed be evidence that there was a catastrophe, but only a local catastrophe. You're not going to find anyone in mainstream geology who says that floods never happen, that mudslides, rock slides, and sinkholes never happen. The point is that they do happen, and when they do, they point to local catastrophic phenomena, not global phenomena, because we find trees of both types fossilized in this manner. Now, another of the claims that goes along with this is the notion that the fossilization had to be rapid because the trees would rot away, that there wouldn't be time for them to be preserved. And this is quite a strange claim to make, considering that when it comes specifically to coal beds, we're talking about areas that are bogs, areas that are marshy. And while fossilization is rare in this area, in these areas, as it is anywhere, let me show you a picture of what the chemistry of bogs, which is highly acidic and anaerobic, has been known to do to people. This is Tollen Man, one of the best known bog mummies from around the world. Uncovered in Denmark, dates back to the 4th century BCE. Pay close attention to how well preserved the body is. Clothing, hair, the rope around its neck, facial hair waiting to be shaved, all preserved to this very day. So can this sort of chemistry apply to wood as well? Well, it can. Let me put up a chart here that shows you what it looks like when wood is preserved in a bog. This chart shows us how one type of bogwood, known as morta, ages. Based on the amount of time that it spends in this environment, highly acidic, anaerobic, the wood will change following this pattern. Now notice, these are unfossilized segments. So the wood that's here has not been turned into a fossil, and yet it's survived, preserved for thousands of years. So we're talking about conditions that absolutely can produce the fossils that we're talking about. And the specific formation does not support the sort of global catastrophic theory that is being purported. So, like mainstream geologists, my reply when being asked about the significance of polystrate trees is simply to shrug, because I don't think there is any. Absolutely every feature that is ascribed to them can be explained by conventional science. So I want to thank Topolcat for the question, and I really hope that you continue to engage with people whose position is contrary to yours, by which I don't mean atheists, but I do mean counter-creationists. It seems to me like you are currently getting your information about physical science, geology in this case. I can only assume the same when it comes to biology, but you seem to be getting it from very dubious sources. So I hope as you continue your education, you reach out a bit and continue to ask questions in this manner. So next I will be addressing an additional question that he's raised concerning polonium halos in rocks.